Today we are going to be dealing with, whenever you talk about nutrition, you are dealing with a very complex subject. And the reason for that is anything in medicine or related to medicine directly or indirectly is a very imprecise science, unfortunately. When you deal with physical sciences such as mathematics, physics, and chemistry, and you do an experiment, the results are very precise and they are so accurate that you have to duplicate them only a couple of times before you are absolutely sure that you are dealing with the truth. But when you deal with medicine or any branch of biological sciences, this is a big problem, because our methods of research are still rather primitive. Maybe 20, 30, 40 years down the line, we know for sure that biological sciences will come of age and we will have very precise methods where we can pinpoint exactly what a nutrient does or what a drug does and how it works. Meanwhile, we have these methods where we take thousands of people and divide them into groups, give one group the thing that we are testing, and the other group, what we call a control group, is getting some kind of a fake capsule or placebo, and then we analyze the data and draw some conclusions. And because of so many variables playing role in human health and human biology, such as neurological, psychological issues, economic, behavioral issues, one study is not good enough. 2 or 3 or 5 studies are not good enough. It has to be confirmed multiple times before you can be sure what works for you and what doesn't, what's good for you, what's bad for you. And this is just the nature of the beast. So whatever I tell you today, or whenever we talk about medicine or nutrition, it's not necessarily written in stone. Things do change over time. There are relatively few things that we know for absolutely positively know for sure that they work and they have stood the test of time. So those are the only things that we can say for sure that they are good for you. The rest of them we have to use our wisdom and our judgment, and as time goes by we know and more about what we eat, what's good for us and what's bad for us. So we have to keep our eyes open. And what makes matters much worse is false advertising, scientists involved in promoting false research. It's not uncommon, believe it or not, for negative research, things that show negative results, to put it under the rug. This goes on everywhere because they want to sell you a product and make money off you. So they are constantly promoting studies that showed positive results. And the negative results, those studies that showed negative results, sit on the shelf and they hope for the best that we will do more studies and will show positive. Meanwhile, they will not show you the negative results from another trial. So I can go on and on about this, what the complexity of the situation. What we are going to try to do is to take the sea ocean of knowledge and try to tease out. Because when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to even medicine, believe it or not, even the reputable organizations, they push their own agenda. There are corporations involved, they get funds from corporations, and they show their loyalty to those corporations. Let me ask you a question. How many of you believe that American Heart Association must be telling you all the truth. Because when we hear a word like this, American Heart Association, gosh, this is the American Heart Association. They can't be lying to public. And I'm not suggesting that they're purposely lying to public, but there is a hidden agenda, there are connections. If they got millions of dollars from dairy and meat industry, the chances are they are going to hesitate to lose those funds and financial support. Therefore, even in the face of evidence, they are going to continue to lie to you. And this goes on everywhere.
You believe 50% of what they're saying.
Always be on the watch and don't trust anyone, and I'm no exception. Always do your own research. And wherever there is caution to be taken, I will give you that caution. Because some things are very well known to be good, some things are very, very well known to be bad, and unfortunately, at least half or more of the things we are not sure yet. Research is ongoing, but nonetheless they are promoted and sold to general public, which results in billions of dollars of industry. And it's not one thing, it's multiple. The market is flooded with these nutrients and products and herbs and supplements and minerals and you name it. I'm going to try to lump today's discussion into three groups to simplify. First, we are going to talk about genetically engineered foods, and that's one category. Secondly, I'm going to talk about foods and diets and lump them together, because after all, they mean the same thing. And then we will go into the specifics of supplements, herbs, nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and lump them into one category. And I will go over about 100 different products that are available that have shown promise out of the thousands that are tested. Again, listen to my words. I said showed promise. It's still not a sure thing. So everything we have to scrutinize very carefully. So you always research on your own. So I like to start this off by reading a news item to you. This is Nature. I think I talk about this all the time. This is probably the most respected science journal in the world. Most people who publish in this journal already have made a name for themselves internationally. They have made breakthroughs. A lot of Nobel Prize winners write in this. This is a international weekly journal of science, and it always have one page. It's called 7 Days News and Brief. This is only 6 weeks old. This came out in December 2nd last year, so 8 weeks ago. It says policy, it's 7 days news and brief on policy, German GM crops. The highest court in Germany has upheld a law that makes planters of genetically modified crops liable for any contamination of their neighbors' non-GM fields. And this is not a new law. The Federal Constitutional Court said on November 24th, last year, which is about 3 months ago, that the 2004 legislation, which was amended in 2008, so it's not a new legislation, which also requires minimum 150 meters buffer zone between GM and conventional crops and a public register for the location of GM plantings, was justified because the long-term consequences of GM technology are still unclear. How did this came up in the court? Because the law had been first challenged by the state of Saxony-Anhalt. Why do you think is a state, one of the states in Germany, challenging that law? And this happens in many European countries from time to time. Any ideas? Because the US corporations who have been booted out of Europe, almost all of Europe, for selling their genetically engineered foods, have their connections with politicians over there. So they try to get in there, they get booted out, and they try again. Sometimes in 1998, all GM products had been booted out of most of Europe, with the exception that wherever they sell, they have to label them. They have to say on top that it's a genetically engineered food. Let's compare that with the United States. There are some things that we eat on a regular basis that 90% of those food supply is genetically engineered, and you will never know. It has become almost impossible not to eat genetically engineered food, I can tell you, no matter how much of an expert you are. Nearly 90% of the four crops, corn, canola, cottonseed, and soya, is all genetically engineered. So all the jars, even if you avoid these four things or avoid these four oils, when you buy these jars, most of the foods in jars, they are ingredients. You can run, but you cannot hide. You are married to genetically engineered foods. Now we tend to believe that we have human rights. How many of us believe we live in the greatest country in the world, therefore we have more human rights than most of the countries in the world? You want to raise your hands? Don't feel guilty. America is a great country. I think for many other reasons you can argue that this is one of the greatest countries to live in.
Let me say something here.
Yes.
Bill Maher, the comedian, I mean, if you want to hear truth, listen to some comedians, don't listen to politicians. He said one time, people say America is the greatest country in the world. How do you know? Have you ever lived in Denmark?
Yeah, that's a good point. Scandinavia, if any country wants to follow a model, Scandinavian countries have actually proven what works and what doesn't. They are not perfect, but anyway, comedy is the best way to convey the truth, because any other way can be very offensive. If I said some things and I continue to do that, someone then will take a shot at me. But if I'm a comedian, I can say anything and I can get away with it. The reason I brought that up, I think it's really a human rights issue. All I'm saying as a consumer, you are free to genetically engineer foods. Just let me know, give me a choice if I want to eat it or not. Now when they do privately surveys, 9 out of 10 Americans, when they're given the choice, if you were given GMO foods, would you eat it? And their answer is no. So these big 5 biotechnology companies and those who make pesticides and engineered foods, they know that if they started labeling, they're going to go out of business very quickly. So there is only one way to misinform the public or to keep them in the dark, is not to label. And they have enough. They play golf with FDA. They play golf with the politicians. So it's very easy for them. What kind of a human right it is to feed the public potential poison? Now, I'm not saying they are poisonous foods, don't take me wrong. I'm saying potential poison, something that could be potential poison that we eat every day. I want to tell you a little bit about genetic engineering, what genetic engineering is. It's a wonderful science, like science is always wonderful. It's only 35 years old science. The first recombinant DNA technology was tried in 1973, and some wonderful things happened. They were able to make a bacteria produce insulin because they inserted the insulin gene in there. They were able to make antibiotics. So the science of genetic engineering has a great future. We know for sure that that's the future of humanity. It's the same science that will be able to make us live to be 200, 300 years of age. That will happen. It's coming. In the future, we are going to be traveling in space. Even if we travel at the speed of light, even to go to the nearest star, it takes forever. So we have to be able to live very, very long so we can make those trips. And genetic engineering has all that promise. But when it comes to humans, feeding humans, you have to be a little bit more cautious. I believe that they introduced genetic engineering into the food supply a little too early. Maybe they should have waited another 20 years, unless they are really sure that this does not cause any problems. Just 20 years after this science was invented of recombinant DNA technology, these companies jumped on the bandwagon. They said, maybe we can genetically engineer our foods. This way, we engineer crops in such a way that they don't die. Insects can't kill them. And these fruits or vegetables keep on growing larger and larger. We have better crops. We will sell more. We will make more money. And at the same time, we can sell pesticides. So within the last 15 years, 90% of the supply of 4 crops, there are some other crops, the major crops are cotton, canola, corn and soya. 90% of the supply is genetically engineered. Now, as you see in Germany, they said that any GM crop cannot be close to a farmer who is growing natural food. It has to be at least 150 meters, they said. It has to be 100 feet as a buffer zone, because they are concerned that the pollens from the genetically engineered crop is going to cross-pollinate the natural and make it also genetically engineered. Here in the United States, it's the opposite. They will often go, these companies, and where genetically engineered crop is growing, they'll go to the next farmer who is growing his own crop, test his seed, and tell him, you stole our seed because it's genetically engineered. You didn't buy it from us, you must have stolen it. So you have a choice. You can either start buying our seed or we will take you to court. What do you think the poor farmer is going to do, who is barely making a living? If he goes to a lawyer, the lawyer is going to ask for a $20,000 down payment. So more and more farmers forced to buy genetically engineered seeds. This is how they have been very successful in introducing genetically engineered organisms into many crops. So from my perspective, I think it's a human rights issue. All I'm asking is, please label that. I'm not asking you not to genetically engineer foods. You exercise your rights, but let me exercise my right. At least let me know, give me a choice. Don't say that we are going to sell you something and we are not going to tell you where it comes from. This is very typical. This should remind you of, if I don't see many people who are here in my global warming lecture, it's the same issue again and again. that when it comes to human rights are for the wealthy and the big corporations, and we do not exercise the same rights that people enjoy who have wealth. You all heard that expression, the government of the people, by the people, for the people. Is that the government we have? How about saying government of the corporations, by the corporations, for the corporations? So vox populi, vox Dei, the same political thinkers say. It's here's vox corporation, vox Dei. The voice of corporations is the voice of God. And we, you and I, do not matter. So biotechnology, like any other science, science can always be two-edged sword. And it's not the poor science. Science always does good. It's we who make decisions how we're going to use science. You can make nuclear power, you can use it for energy to light up the whole world, or you can make the same atom bomb and throw on someone and kill everybody. So the choices are ours. We as a society make those choices. Yes, ma'am.
I had heard that the United States is going to use the World Trade Organization to put pressure on Germany and anyone else in Europe that is not accepting our GMO products. And they're going to say that's a restriction of trade. And we represent freedom in this country, so we're going to bully them if they want to participate.
They have been doing it for a long time. They are saying this is it's a violation of international trade laws, that Germany and other countries in Europe are putting a restriction on the trade. So they are violating the agreements. Well, nowhere in the agreements say, in those international agreements, nowhere does it say that you can trade something that could be potential poison. Now again, I'm using these strong words. I'm not suggesting probably most of them could be potentially safe foods. We can still eat them, but that's not the point. What I'm saying is something that could potentially be poison. I tell you what, they have been able to find those genes that were taken from bacteria that inserted into the crops. They have found that in the gut of animals already. And there is one human study, they have found that gene in the bacteria that lives in the human gut. Do you realize that our gut at any given moment has about 10 pounds of bacteria in there? Because that's part of the digestive system. So if the bacteria is able to uptake this gene, if this gene can splice open the genetic code of our bacteria and make a home over there, what tells you that it can't do into our human cells? And if it does, what are the consequences? Are we going to change all species? Are we going to completely transform the biodiversity on this planet, all the plants and animals? Are we going to become completely responsible for evolution, which nature was taken care of? Now we are going to take over the task of evolution. It could potentially be dangerous. This is all I'm saying. And Europe is also not saying that it's necessarily dangerous. They are saying the science is not yet clear. There are too many question marks. You cannot feed humans with something that is not yet appropriately studied. Because what happens is, this is how it works, if you are interested. Very simple science people study in high school. It all started from virus. It's like taking, what is a virus? Virus is a piece of DNA. What it does is, when you get infected with the virus, it goes into your cells, split open a piece of your DNA, throw it out, and insert itself over there. That was the idea that we got from virus and developed this new technology. Says, aha, this is wonderful. If a virus can do, we can do the same trick. We can modify species. We can modify our animals, plants, anything we want to do. So you can take any insect, animal, plant, splice out It's called DNA splicing. Splice out a piece of DNA, a gene, and then reinsert it into something else. Of course, you're going to need connectors and ligands. There's a lot of science to it. But what has happened is, these scientists who are working for these companies, what they won't tell you is that sometimes, again, the negative studies are swept under the rug. That sometimes it's not a sure thing how this gene is going to express itself or where it's going to go. If you are giving insulin made by bacteria to a human, even if something goes wrong, it's potentially saving a life. This person is going to die anyways. But messing with the human species is not very ethical. And that is what recombinant DNA technology is, which holds promise in the future for our species. But like I said, when science falls into the hands of the wealthy, this is what they do. It's not really the fault of science, it's people who control it, who fund research, private companies. So the scientists who work for them, they will present positive research. They will tell you how wonderful it is. They will publish papers. And here and there they find out that, this is problematic. They will never tell you that part. Even if they want to tell you, your owner who hired you will boot you out. You will lose your job if you brought that up. So the scientist is expected to show loyalty. And also do not forget that in private industry, a scientist makes nearly twice as much. And scientists are people like us. They're vulnerable. If you work at a university, they're going to give you $40,000 and the grant is for 3 years. It's not a sure thing if it's going to renew. The funding is going to come when it's time to renew. And when you work for a private industry, you will get $100,000 easily a year. And if you continue to be loyal to them, to the tobacco industry or the food industry, then you will be rewarded. You will get raises, and you have a job, you have a tenure now. You have a job for a life. When I was lecturing global warming, I gave you the names of just few individuals who were able to dupe the entire population of the United States by creating doubt in your mind about global warming. It's the same trick that the wealthy do. Because you and I, we are riffraff. We don't matter. Who cares about us? So what I'm going to do is, we don't want to make it into a talk of politics. We want to talk about foods. So what I'm going to do very briefly, in your folders there is a non-GMO shopping guide, and you can read details. I'll just mention a few highlights so that you are aware, so that when you read you don't miss those ideas. Important thing to remember that this guide does not cover potentially harmful ingredients like allergens, colors, or additives. It's not about those. You are on your own. Figure that out. This is about non-GMO shopping guide. It does not talk about colors and allergens. There are other things that can be harmful. And in fact, genetically engineered foods have also shown allergies and harmful effects in animals, including death. One guy was doing research on hamsters. They try to do research on animals that live for a short while. This way they can see the effect of an entire lifetime. So they were doing research on hamsters. So they have two groups of hamsters. One is being fed GMO foods, the other non-GMO foods. And they watch them, they reproduce. Now you have a next generation. So they pick parents from both categories and have them reproduce. In the second generation, the GMO foods diet, hamsters produce fewer children. And then they do the same thing with the third generation and the fourth generation. By the time you get to the fourth generation, they're infertile. From producing 89, 90 pups, now they are not producing. So there are many, many research results like that that make us skeptical and suspect whether GMO foods are safer or if it's the right time to introduce them. We need to continue to do more research, and they should not be put into the human supply of food until we are sure, but unfortunately it is really too late, I can tell you that. It is really, for some crops, it is too late. You cannot reverse that. This is one of the philosophical arguments why we should wait much, much longer before introducing into the human supply, because once you introduce a gene into species, it's irreversible. You cannot take every cell in every animal and then go back and take it out. It's not like you tied your tubes, like women come to me 5 years later, can you put it back? So basically, we already said that unlike the most industrialized countries, the US does not require labeling. And there are some tips to avoid GMO foods. There are 3 tips basically. The first one tells you that you can look for the word certified organic. Now if you see that word, they really have no reason to lie to you because they can be held liable. So certified organic food is probably a reliable label. The other thing you can do is some companies have enrolled in the so-called non-GMO project, and it will say on that non-GMO project verified seals, it has seals on it, then you know that that is a genuine non-GMO food. Look for words such as, and most of these products will have on it no RBGH, you know what that stands for. It says no recombinant bovine growth hormone, or RBST, which stands for recombinant bovine somatotropin. What is somatotropin? Somatotropins are not the hormone itself, but it's a tropic factor which will produce that hormone. That's going to make the cow's udders so big that can barely walk and will produce a lot more milk. So for example, in humans, all the somatotropins, all the hormonal system, it starts here with the hypothalamus. You have hypothalamus, pituitary, you have a thyroid gland, adrenal gland, your ovaries or testes, whatever sex you are, and then your skin. All the feedback goes back to hypothalamus and tells hypothalamus guides everything. So it releases somatotropins. Somatotropin by definition means to stimulate other endocrine glands to do their job. So they put a somatotropin in there which is going to stimulate the organism to make all other hormones, and this is how they achieve their purpose. So these cows are going to produce tons of extra milk.
Would it be oversimplification to say that we should not take any food that contains additives with names that we cannot pronounce?
That, and I think any additive, whether you can pronounce, that's part of the purpose of this guide actually. This is certainly not a comprehensive guide, but it pretty much gives you enough ideas if you follow this. And this is courtesy of this guy who is a big on no GMO all over the world, Jeffrey Smith. The next thing you can do is avoid at-risk ingredients. What I have done is also in your folder there's a separate list of ingredients. If you are very diligent, I'm not that diligent, I'll be honest with you. If you're diligent enough to look at the list and every time you go shopping look for those ingredients and avoid those foods, it's up to you. I just gave you a list. So avoid those ingredients. The 8 GM crops in the United States are corn, we talked about soybeans, canola, cottonseed, sugar beets, Hawaiian papaya, most of it, and small amounts of zucchini and yellow squash. So watch out for that. 2 of these ingredients specifically require special attention, sugar. So if you see a product made in North America and it says sugar on it, you can bet it's genetically engineered. There is no such thing where it says sugar and it's not genetic. It's always genetically engineered. So watch out for that. And it may have some sugar cane in it. It may not be all genetically engineered, but you can bet it is part of it, at least part of it or all of it genetically engineered. Same thing goes with dairy. You have to look for those hormone labels. Unless it says no RB, ST or RB, GH, don't buy it. Now there is a list here of companies that sell alternative dairy products. So you can see there is a list of different categories. There is a list of alternative dairy products, baby foods and infant formula, beverages, body care, breads and baked goods, candy, chocolate and sweeteners, cereals and breakfast foods, condiments, oils, dressings, spreads. And on the next page you have fruits and vegetables, grains, beans, flour, herbs, spices and other ingredients, meat, fish, eggs, mercantile, packed frozen meals, pasta, pet products, snacks, foods and bars, soups and sauces, tofu, vitamin supplement. So basically, yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to ask you, so if we go back and look at the labeling of the products that we have been purchasing and buying and,
Right.
and eating, are you saying that it's, well, then it's too late because then we would have already altered our...
No, I didn't say that. Remember I said that hopefully so far no serious harm has been done to humans. I gave you an example how a fourth generation of pups were completely infertile. A lot of these things work their way. This is how evolution works. Evolution works very slowly over generations. So we do not know, we have some evidence that it does. Genetically engineered organisms and foods do harm to certain animals. They have looked at cows and other feeding animals who feed on seeds that are genetically engineered, very high death rate, disease rate. But then there could be other harms which are in the next few generations. It's almost an analogous situation to global warming and what's going to happen down the line. We are permanently changing the planet. So we have to watch out. I think it may be unnecessary to worry about what has already happened to me. Maybe I'm already messed up. Hopefully nothing has happened. And they say, the expression is, you do better when you know better. So if we know better, we start doing things. We use our best judgment. So let's very, very briefly make a comment about these different categories of foods. When we say alternative dairy products, we are basically talking about, products that come from soya beans. And I have a lot of discussion upcoming about foods, and we will go into a lot of details about a lot of food. So if I'm skipping, going fast, right now I just want to focus on the guide and give you a brief outline. You read the detail at home. So don't worry if I'm jumping, because we are coming back to a lot of these things. Baby foods and infant formulas, the secret ingredient in these products is often soya or milk from cows injected with the growth hormone. Just so watch out. So there is a list of companies where you can buy non-GMO foods. And you may have to search it or identify. I do know that for beverages, which is the next category, there are a couple of companies that I'm aware. Silk, you see that in the market. And also, when we shop at Fresh and Easy in Bakersfield, they have Heritage milk and soya. It says organic, it says no hormones. Cows are fed with natural grass, things like that. Look for those. So beverages, when it comes to beverages, it's important to know that fortunately most juices are made from non-GMO fruit. The exception is going to be papaya. Remember we talked about papaya is one of the 8 crops which is genetically engineered. Body care, most body care products come from soya and corn. What are those? Genetically engineered crops, so watch out. Breads and baked cereals. Many packaged breads, bakery items contain other GMO ingredients such as corn syrup, soya flour, sugar from sugar beets. So you, like I said, you can run, but you cannot hide. Is that the right expression that George Bush likes? Is that okay? So these are the names of the companies that you can seek. Cereals and breakfast foods. Since so many alternative dairy products are made from soya beans, be aware that they may contain GM materials. Condiments, oil, dressings, and spreads. Again, unless you see exclusive label saying it's non-GMO, you are talking about corn, soybean, cottonseed, canola oils are used in there. Everything comes from North America, certainly has these genetically modified products in them. So what can you really do? This is very sad that actually corn, canola, cottonseed, and soya, these are vegetable oils which have primarily monounsaturated and polyunsaturated triglycerides in them, which is good for you actually. So under normal circumstances, these are good foods, but we are screwed because they're genetically engineered. So it's up to you to make that decision if you want to. What is the alternative? I think it's equally good for you to go for olive oil, go for coconut oil, safflower, sunflower, all those. Use other alternatives. Because generally speaking, majority of the vegetable oils are mostly polyunsaturated or monounsaturated. That's what you want. It's the saturated fat which is bad for you, which is primarily come from animal meat and dairy. So that's what, so if you use vegetable oils, you're better off, with the exception of if you choose not to use those oils which are most likely genetically engineered. Try to avoid them. Dairy products. Again, some US dairy farms inject the genetically engineered hormones, we know that, into their cows to boost milk production. We talked about that. Their cows may still be, now let's say even if they did not inject those growth hormones, but the cows may be feeding the GM feed, the seeds that are genetically engineered. Again, you can run, but you cannot hide. Now, what this guy was good, nice enough to, what he did is he knows that it's very difficult to find companies that sell non-GM foods. So he divided that into categories. He said if you live on, Midwest and Gulf states, or East Coast versus West Coast, these are the common companies. So we live on the West Coast, so he gave you a separate category of dairy, no hormonal products. On the West Coast, give you Berkeley Farms. I see that sometimes when you go to shopping. I rarely shop, my wife does, but I see that. So there are a few names here that look familiar. On the next page, fruits and vegetables. Very few fresh fruits and vegetables for sale in the United States are genetically engineered, thank God. But there are some. One way to tell, if you look at a piece of fruit, you see some of these fruits have a little sticker on it. Little sticker. Not all of them have. There are bananas that are this big. I don't see any stickers on them. If you go to Costa Rica and see how they soak these bananas from one chemical into another and another, you will not want to eat those bananas again. But a lot of fruits do have little stickers on them. If you see 4 digits on it, you are okay. It's locally grown or it's not genetically engineered. If you see 5 digits on it, it still could be okay, but you must make sure that it starts with number 8. If it starts with the number 9, it's most likely genetically engineered. But most fruit juices and fruits are still a safe supply out there. Grains, beans, and flour. Other than corn, no GM grains are sold on the market. That's good to know. Herbs, spices, and other ingredients. No spices that are genetically modified. Sometimes spice combination may include soya or corn derivative. I told you these 4 things, you cannot run away from them. They are everywhere in all food supply. Meat, fish, and eggs. No genetically modified fish, fowl, or livestock is yet approved for human consumption, thank God. And so that's good to know. Packed frozen meals, highly processed. So worry about the big four. What are the big four? Corn, soya, cottonseed, and canola. Pasta, other than corn, no GM grains are sold on the market yet. Pet products, some people, you love your pets, so you don't want to feed them crap either. So if there are companies that make certified organic pet foods as well. Snacks, foods, and bars. Look for snacks made from wheat, rice, or oats, and ones that use sunflower or safflower. There is almost no GM popcorn. That's good to know. At least you can eat popcorn tonight. Soups and sauces. Again, worry about the big four. Big four at risk ingredients. They are there in soups and sauces. Tofu. Worry about the big four. Big four is everywhere. Vitamins and supplements gotten into your vitamins. They come from soya and corn derivatives. And on the right side there is another GM ingredients guide. You can use this guide on second page, or you can use the separate guide that I gave you. Now it's good to know the definitions that US Department of Agriculture uses when you talk about what is organic mean and what is organic ingredients mean. So whenever you see the label 100% organic, it means ingredients are all organic. If you see only the word organic, then it could mean that maybe 90% of is organic and 10% could be genetically engineered ingredients in there. And sometimes you will see labels like made with organic. That again could mean 60-70% is non-GMO organic and the rest could be. So it's very hard to eat everything that is totally organic because it's so much, these things are so much in the food space.
So popcorn, is that a different strain of corn? So that's why there's no GMO?
It must have probably maybe have anything to do with the approval process because every food that goes in the market requires initial approval, I believe. So maybe it has, I don't know the...
Well, I thought corn was corn, but maybe there's special corn grown just for popcorn.
I don't believe so, but it will be special corn in the sense that genetically engineered corn is not allowed. That's the only rationale I can think of. But this is, I did confirm that this is a fact. How this happened, I don't know. I can look up more detail if you like.
So if we're going to rate organic, then the most highly organic is certified organic.
Certified organic means 100%, or when you see the word 100% organic means the same thing. Okay, let's move on. We are going to talk briefly about foods and diets. This is a sort of a continued discussion from the first seminar on nutrition. Now basically when you use the word diet, in America when we use the word diet, almost rings a bell, we're thinking about weight loss. Although diet, the literal meaning of diet means, food. Like different countries people have different diets, it's a different staple diet. So the word food and diet, they are really two sides of the same coin. They really mean the same thing. So that's why I lumped them together. So as we understand, whenever we use the word diet, we are thinking about some kind of modification. Is that not right? Because when somebody says, I'm dieting or I'm on a certain diet, what we are essentially saying is, I am depriving myself of certain things that I don't eat. And I am trying to eat this, this, and this for whatever purposes, whatever the reason may be. Now, what are the common reasons people want to be on a diet or modify their diet or what they eat or what they don't eat. One common reason is most people trying to lose weight, correct? That would be one reason. Another logical reason will be someone says, I eat a certain diet because that person is thinking of being healthy, because you believe certain diet is healthy for you. So those are the two reasons I can think of. You can think of a third reason. Someone is on a certain diet or modifies eating behaviors because perhaps you are trying to do both. Trying to lose weight and you're trying to live healthy. You want to eat foods that does do both. Now if that's the case, doesn't it make sense to have a diet that does both? Instead of being on a diet for losing weight versus being in a diet that is healthy, but there can be a healthy foods that can also make you 400 pounds after a while. So it is inherent in the very statement of saying, I want to eat foods, or I want to change my diet or modify my diet in such a way that I live healthy. Inherent in that statement is the fact that you're also trying to stay slim, because being slim is part of being healthy. It is one of those things that in medicine and nutrition is non-controversial. We are convinced beyond the shadow of a doubt, if you walk around being way overweight, you will not live longer, you will have medical problems, it will shorten your life, you will have a terrible life. We know that. Remember I said there are some things we know for sure, some things we don't know for sure. Something we know for sure they are good, some things we know for sure they are bad. This is one of those things we know for sure. There is a total consensus on that. 5 minutes for the break?
Yeah.
Okay. So it should make sense to you to be on a diet or eat things that will keep you healthy, avoid medical problems, make you live longer, and avoid obesity and stay slim. Now I like to give you 3-4 different reasons why it's not a good idea to deprive yourself of certain foods for just one purpose, such as losing weight. Instead, it's a much smarter idea to eat in a way that you do not necessarily deprive yourself, and nonetheless, you do not gain weight. It's doable. And here is the rationale. Number one, when you go on diets, you know it is always temporary. Yes or no? When I was doing a seminar on weight loss, I said, okay, how many of you tried diet? Of course, everybody tried diet. How long did you keep it off? Some people were 3 months off, 6 months off. After that, when I said, how about 1 year, very few hands went up. 2 years, 0 hand went up. So by definition, when you diet, you are talking about a very temporary phenomenon, because it's impossible to stay on a diet for the rest of your life, because your cravings are going to come back. And one of the huge drawbacks of being on a diet and being very selective and deprive yourself of foods is that not only it's going to cause emotional pain because you are depriving yourself, but also what happens is when you go on a diet, you are essentially using some kind of trick to reduce the number of calories going into your system. Otherwise, you will be breaking the law of physics, and you can't, even if you tried. So when you do that, your body has a way to slow down the metabolism, because body doesn't know anything else other than survival, to keep you alive. And that slowing down of your metabolism, you will pay a very heavy price for that. Because when you break that diet, when you go back, now you are starting to eat regularly again. Your body says, I'm used to slow metabolism now. I'm saving for the future in the form of fat, because if a crisis occurs or if there's famine, I want to keep you alive. So when you regain that weight, it will come back with a vengeance. So each time you do a diet, you will get fatter and fatter and fatter over time, and worse. And you will have more medical problems. That's one reason, one rationale, why it's not the best choice to do diets. Although I'm not totally ruling out some diet here and there, we will talk about it later, why it may be necessary for some people to be more aggressive. But this is not about one person, this person or that person. It's about how to make the entire population healthy. My responsibility as a lecturer here is not to make suggestions which work for you or for you, but to make suggestions which make America healthy. Therefore, I should not be suggesting things that are, ideas that work for some people. So that's reason number one why it's not the smartest thing in the world to deprive yourself of certain foods. Unless you know for sure that they are unhealthy, of course, you don't eat them. That we are coming to that. We're going to talk about good and bad foods. Second reason I like to give you is that diets can be potentially unhealthy. It may help you lose weight, but they can be potentially unhealthy. And I will give you examples of certain diets as we move forward, how they can be unhealthy. Third reason I like to give you is that all the claims that are made about weight loss, they may not work. We know for sure that when they do work, they work only for the short term. They never work for the long term. But in a lot of cases, they don't even work for the short term. And you wonder why. Do you ever wonder even that, some people who come to me say, I'm doing everything, I'm not even eating anything, and I can't lose weight. They don't tell me the whole truth, but it is true. In some people, even they don't work for short term. Why is that? Do you wonder why diets never work, sometimes don't even work for the short term? Because weight problem is not just a diet problem. It's just not a food problem. And those who want to make money off you, sell you diets, they do not tell you the whole truth. Maybe they don't even know the whole truth in most cases. Diets seem to fail is that there are, broadly speaking, three components to the weight loss and living healthy. There are three components that will either help you lose weight or live healthy. And those components are neurologically what's going on in the individual's brain, metabolic, how the person's metabolism works, and a genetic component. They have vaguely identified about 20 genes that are involved in the weight gain or loss process. They're not very well understood yet. But realize that if the problem is with the brain chemistry, with a sense of well-being, there's anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, which has led to all these kind of behavioral issues, you are not going to be successful in doing your diet. Your mind has to function. The mind doesn't work, nothing else is going to work. And then metabolic is another very major component. Anybody who sells you a diet, they're not going to say to you, maybe your metabolism, something is not right with your metabolism, maybe you have developed diabetes, perhaps you have, by your eating habits, change your metabolism permanently, that need to be corrected first. They're not going to tell you that. They are going to sell it to everyone and say this will work for you. And metabolism problem and neurological problems are all induced by the environment. We are not born with it. Through the environment, as we interact with the environment, we develop all these problems. And they have to be corrected simultaneously. Genetic problem. Genes will turn on to cause obesity when we do not manage the genes well. You wonder what the hell I'm talking about. Do you manage genes? There's nothing you can do about genes. Yes, you can. 98% of the genes that we are born with, now we know better. You do better when you know better. 15 years ago, we thought genes, you're condemned permanently because they have written the law for you. That's God's word. But now we know that genes actually turn on and off based on what we do. It's called epigenetics, by the way. So these are the three components, and we often forget that there are many, many other variables which are equally important. How about economics? Do you think a person who is struggling to make a living is worried about the first of the month is coming, do I have enough money for my rent or mortgage? There are problems in the family, not enough money to pay bills. You think they're going to think about, they're going to be successful in doing diet? No. The best thing they're going to do is they swing by on their way back home, they're going to call for a pizza or swing by McDonald's, because that is the most convenient method and it's cheap. Industry has found a ways to make takeout food so cheap that it also becomes an economic issue. And not to mention the false advertisement. If we keep on hammering you with the false information, people are going to be affected by that as well. So living healthy and losing weight is a very complex phenomenon. So therefore we know if there's anything at all that's going to be most successful in giving you long-term results, that's going to be always one and only one thing, that is behavior change. It is primarily a behavior issue, believe it or not. Weight is a behavior issue. Healthy eating is also a behavior issue. I'm not suggesting that you feel guilty, that your behavior is bad. It is something that has accumulated over time. And that is where you can, if you cannot pinpoint a problem, you cannot actually treat that problem. If you don't know the cause, then you don't know how to handle it. So before you do anything in life, if you do not know what is causing the problem, how can you solve the problem? So that is one reason I recommend that we take a totally different approach towards food. And that approach should be to tease out what's available out there between three categories. Those foods that we know we know for sure with a probability 95 to 99% probability we know that they are healthy because they have stood the test of time and consistently the research has shown the same results. And then there's a category of foods, the research is also pretty consistent that they are bad for you. We try to avoid it. And then there is the third category of foods about which we are not very sure, or perhaps the research is still incomplete. So there you have to use your good judgment. You are on your own. I can only give you ideas how to handle that category of foods. And there is overall a way to live healthy, stay slim, and avoid three problems which almost every single one of you will die from. Those three problems are cancer, heart attack, or diabetes. We know, statistically speaking, that 95% of the American adults will die from one of these three things. The other 5% will die from aging. Aging means People also die of aging, which means you are so damn old that you gotta go, because that's the law of nature. But you were healthy the day you died. You just went to sleep and didn't wake up. You know the 106 years olds, healthy, working in the backyard. They never complain that they are fatigued, and one day they die quietly. That's the way to go. It's beautiful. So unfortunately, we know that 95% of that, so statistically speaking, there is one among you in the whole theater who is going to die of aging. Every single other one of you is going to die, one of the three things that I gave you. And we know that not only we can be selective, eat good foods, avoid bad foods, and the in between, the gray area, maybe you eat less or maybe don't eat, because the research is not yet complete. That's the smart way of looking at things. Not only we can eat healthy and smart, but it is possible to get rid of the risk factors for those three conditions. That's going to happen to almost every single one of you. But they are totally avoidable, believe it or not. You can do things today that will completely rule out the possibility of developing any one of those three categories of disease processes which will eventually kill most of you. I want to give you an example. About 90 years ago, some of you heard about Dr. Gerson diet. Okay. He published about 50 cases where he used fruits and vegetables basically, and he does some other things like coffee enemas. We don't know which one helps, but we are pretty sure it's the fruits and vegetables and the phytochemicals in them that are known to avoid all these three problems. Over the last 70, 80 years, a lot of the industry has taken his ideas and promote them as their own, but meanwhile they continue to call him a witch doctor. Now you tell me, physicians, medical associations, all these wonderful people who are leaders in the society, you tell me that if a drug company that has just made a pellet that they're going to stick into your prostate gland because you have prostate cancer, it's going to give you 3 more months to live. But it costs $96,000. You think this company is going to let you eat fruits and vegetables? What are your chances of success? You going to mess with this company? Who will mess with this company? Raise your hand. I was listening to this senator, sometimes I don't sleep at night, I'm thinking, so I have nothing better to do, so I turn on the TV, so I'm listening to this long lecture by a senator. He goes on and on, rationalizing why this chemotherapy, this new therapy that has come out for prostate cancer. He said, think of if it was your family, wouldn't you want your loved one to live 3 more months? So these people in the Congress who play golf, that's my favorite word, who play golf with the drug companies, they are really their spokespeople. They are not your representative. How many of you think that politicians that you voted for represent you?
I have to interrupt you. Some wise man one time said, no golf player should be allowed to hold political office.
Because you can play football together. If you're buddies, the way legal system works, thanks to the Mosaic law, where it comes from, they will ask a lawyer or arbitrator, do you have any relationship with such and such party out of the plaintiff and defendant? any kind of relationship. Yes, I play golf with the defendant. Is this relationship will affect your decision making? No, Your Honor. That's all you have to say. And now you can proceed and go and screw the plaintiff. How stupid a legal system can be. Can it be worse than that? This is how the system works. Anyways, we don't want to go off the tangent. Let's get back to what we were talking about. So there is no doubt today, there's enough research to show that if those about 8 different phytochemicals routinely go into your system, you are unlikely to develop cancer, heart disease, or diabetes. And they come from, you can think of, when you think of fruits and vegetables, think of 5 colors. White, blue, deep yellow, orange color, black color, red color. So if you look at, the reason I give you colors is it's easy to remember colors than remember individual names of fruits and vegetables. Every single fruit and vegetable falls into these 5 colors. Add these 5 colors to your diet and you get all the 8, 9 very important phytochemicals which constantly fight cancer, heart disease, diabetes. Do you think the meat industry and the dairy industry wants you to eat fruits and vegetables? No. They tell you if you eat a lot of meat, it will get rid of your cancer. They will show you research that shows how good is milk for you. One of the biggest crimes committed to humanity is every woman who has given birth to a child to go there as quickly as possible. I can tell you that because I happen to be an obstetrician and a gynecologist from my training. This is what happens in the hospitals after you deliver a baby. They get there so quickly, the baby doesn't have a chance to latch on to the mother. So get so used to the bottle. This is a sad story. This is one of the worst crimes that has been committed. Not only in the Western culture, but these companies are now invading all the third world countries. It's everywhere. And you think your hospital is your friend, they'll let them in. Your doctor, you think your friend, your physician who delivered the baby. None of them are your friends. So we know for sure, we were talking about now, we're going to get into what foods are good for you. I'm going to throw names at you which I can say that with 95 to 99% probability, they are good for you. Go for it. It's unlikely that you will go wrong. So those foods are, we mentioned that early on a little bit in the first seminar on nutrition. First one is whole grains. Look for the word whole. Do not be fooled. The only word that will tell you you're getting the right thing is whole. Again, you have to keep in mind GMOs and all of that. Now that subject is behind us. We're moving on. Whole grains. Second one is fish. Now, fish is a big problem. It is very difficult to find fish in certain areas where you live that is fresh, which is mercury free. There's always a scare in the newspaper. I don't have an answer for you. Perhaps you can take a substitute omega-3 fatty acids as a supplement. Maybe that will substitute, because these are essential fatty acids. The omega-3, there is no doubt, there is absolutely no doubt, there's enough research to prove that they lower the risk of heart disease, they lower your cholesterol, lower the risk of blood pressure, and they also lower the risk of cancers. So you have to figure out a way how to have fish or fish oils in your diet. They increase your good cholesterol, they decrease your bad cholesterol. They treat blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, all inflammatory disease, chronic illnesses. The third category is walnuts and almonds. Basically, The good thing about these things is that they have no cholesterol, and the oils they have in them is the plant oils. Remember, we talked about saturated fats. Fats are good for you. Fats are very important, but the monounsaturated and the polyunsaturated fats is found in nuts. You can have almond milk. You can get that in any shape or form. And they are loaded with nutrients, with minerals and vitamins. Next category is legumes. Legumes refers to lentils, any color lentils. There are like 10, 15 different kind of lentils, beans, peas, very important. Lentils is another category of plant-based food that give you a lot of protein. One of the controversies ever since the dawn of ages has been, and a lot of it's politics, to say those of you who have plant-based diet or vegetarians, you are not getting all the protein because it's impossible for plants to give you all the protein. That is a total, complete lie. They will tell you, you don't get, well, you get this, you don't get these amino acids. If you carefully design your diet in a way that you eat things that have protein in them, and there are some foods that I will mention that has pretty much most of the 20 amino acids in them. You do get all the amino acids. This is absolutely not. Even vitamin B12. There's a question, do you get vitamin B12? And there are some sources. So you can be a vegetarian, live to be 110. I come from part of the world. I have seen people live to be 110, over 100. They are not meat eaters. I'm not advocating a certain lifestyle of eating here. That's not my job. My job is to analyze, research. If you want to eat meat, go ahead. And I will tell you the pros and cons. And we are coming into research now, later into categories of foods. The next thing on the list is soya. Now, soya, again, soya has been barraged with controversy. Again, soya is a competition for dairy industry. Soya is also one of those foods that is a competitor with meat almost as it comes to amino acids. You almost, I say carefully, almost get all the amino acids, all the protein that you need. There's controversy, does it slightly increase the risk of breast cancer? Does it slightly decrease the risk of breast cancer? It's not conclusive yet. There's controversy. First study showed it lowers your cholesterol, then study showed it raises your cholesterol slightly. The bottom line is, forget about if it's going to do prevent certain diseases. We know it doesn't cause diseases. Even if it doesn't prevent disease, at least it doesn't cause diseases. Therefore, you are drinking soya milk for nutrients, very rich in nutrients. I think it should be part of every person's diet. Again, remember, soya is a genetically engineered. So now you are up to you. You're going to go find organic. Where you're going to find it, that you have to figure that out. But it should be, if you can find organic, it should be part of the diet. Berries. We are talking about fruits and vegetables. Berries, more specifically blueberries, they should be part of everybody's diet. Berries are loaded with nutrients, all kinds of nutrients, and there is no dark side to berries. When it comes to vegetables, I think on top of the list is cauliflower, broccoli, mushroom. Mushrooms is again come very close to meat in terms of amino acids and vitamins and nutrients and B vitamins in there. So these should be part of the diet. Tomatoes. Tomato we know is a cancer fighting. It lowers the risk of heart attack, prostate cancer, and many other cancers. Should be part of the diet. And green tea, I think we have reached a point in research. There's enough evidence now that it has cancer fighting ability, and it has many, many other advantages. There is a flavonoid. Remember I talked about phytochemicals, antioxidants. There's a flavonoid which is part of the green tea. It's called epigallocatechin gallate. And what it does, it inhibits the enzyme activity necessary for some forms of cancer growth. So When cells divide and a tumor is dividing, at every step of the way in the biochemical pathway, there's the enzyme involved which is making the tumor grow bigger. And this bioflavonoid blocks that enzyme so the tumor doesn't grow. So it's anti-cancer properties. This is, broadly speaking, a list of, one could live on these foods. You don't have to go any further. And remember, keep in the back of your mind that, 5 colors, white will be garlic, onions, scallions, leeks, bananas. Blues will be blackberries, blueberries, purple grapes, raisins, eggplants. A deep orange, a bright yellow will be potatoes, pumpkin, carrots, citrus fruits, oranges, tangerines, grapefruit. Reds will be tomatoes, watermelon, papaya. Green, papaya again. A lot of papaya can be a genetically or a crop. And then the greens are, green spinach, lettuces, collards, green peas, kiwi, broccoli, all of that. And every single one of these category of fruits and vegetables, they bring down your cholesterol, they fight cancer and heart disease and diabetes, without exception. There's no doubt in research. So I think that should be, so generally speaking, if we didn't go any further discussion, a plant-based diet is healthy. We know for sure. But the meat and dairy industry won't let you believe that for a long time to come. Just like the tobacco industry was able to keep people in the dark for half a century until they really had to give up. Global warming is same thing going on that happened with the tobacco industry, and the same thing is going on with the food industry until we get to a point in scientific research that the research will be so overwhelming that finally these industries and corporations will say, okay, we made as much profit as we could, we screwed people as much as we could, we cannot screw anymore. And then they will eventually stop. So this is very briefly, a crude analysis of good foods for you. Bad foods, what are bad foods? Some of the things that we know for sure is, we already briefly talked about it, saturated fat. That is known for sure. Again, I always take caution and I never say 100%. Because this is imprecise science, so I say 95 to 99% probability. I never say 100%. I can tell you with a high probability that saturated fats, which are basically fats that come from meat and dairy products. Animal fat. Basically animal fat is mostly saturated fat. We know that causes high cholesterol, it causes diabetes, causes blood pressure, heart attacks, causes cancer. There is a lot more research coming out now, and China study that was done for 29 years is one of them, and we have to respect that study because it's properly done. It's scientifically done. It's not the final word. I think the guy who did it, Campbell, he's smart enough to make statements in his studies to say, well, don't take it at face value. More study has to be done. And he points out the flaws in study. That is the proper peer review scientific process, to be honest with it. And to analyze, they try to look at as many variables as possible, but it's very, very difficult to deal with a subject such as nutrition and be accurate about everything. So the other bad food, in my opinion, also based on what I know from experience as well as I think there's plenty of evidence and research, is sugar and white flour. First of all, never forget that sugar, when you see sugar, refined sugar, we are dealing with a lot of genetically engineered ingredients. But sugar and white flour and carbohydrates in general. Now, I told you a lot of the foods, they are carbohydrates that are good for you. I'm not suggesting do not eat carbohydrates, but one of the things carbohydrates do, is there some truth that they lead to obesity? There is some truth in it. Here is what happens. When you eat carbohydrates, especially simple sugars, refined sugars, pasta and rice and all these things. And I'm not suggesting these are staple diets. You can have balance in your life. I'm not suggesting don't eat starches and all these things. eat them, but be clever. One of the things carbohydrates do is when you eat them, because they easily convert into sugar, simple sugars, your pancreas spills insulin into the bloodstream, because that's the job of insulin, to take sugar from your bloodstream and put inside the bodies of the cells. So what happens is you eat carbohydrates, you have alkaline tide, insulin pours in, and it takes all that sugar, take it out of your bloodstream, and you soon, before you know, you are hungry again. And over time, the pancreas gets stimulated, it pours more and more insulin. If it pours insulin into the bloodstream, the insulin says, why am I here? I have to do my job. Where is the sugar? That's my sole job. Where is the sugar? So that sends a message to your brain that, hey, there is no sugar in the bloodstream. Then you eat more. So your brain is constantly tricking you, the hunger centers in the brain, that you are hungry again. You eat more insulin, you eat more insulin, and you just can't stop. And also carbohydrates give you a quick booster and energy. You're depressed, you're anxious, you have low self-esteem, you get comfort. That's the only comfort we have, humans. Because my husband doesn't like me, my family hates me, my children are on drugs, what do? May I go to the kitchen again? So there is a very important neurological component to the weight issue. So behavior change and becoming smart about this is very important. So what are there any foods that we are not sure about? Yes, there are, but I will also tell you where the research is going, what the likelihood is. We are not absolutely sure yet about protein that comes from meat or dairy. In other words, animal protein. Although more research is coming out which is pointing in the direction of avoid this. Because protein that comes from animal products, whether it's milk or meat, is likely to increase the risk of cancer.
Cheese too, right?
Sorry?
Cheese?
Yes, cheese, any dairy products, basically. We already talked about, and we know that the fat that is in animal protein is saturated. That's not good for you. I think that's pretty good research. We are convinced of that. Although, the meat and the dairy industry will convince you otherwise. They will show you research that their own people do. They got a lot of money. They hide the negative results. This goes on all the time. But there is enough good research to show that not only the animal fat, but it's possible that even the animal protein may cause cancer. So some of the studies that Campbell did over the years show that, and they did studies in India and the Philippines, that if you eat meat over a certain percentage of your diet, then the risk of breast cancer, colon cancer, liver cancer goes up. Up to having 5% of meat as your diet, the risk remains about the same as non-meat eaters. But after that, that risk starts to go up. It's not a confirmed science yet. I think will be more studies. I have a gut feeling that will turn out to be true. There's only one philosophical argument against that kind of research, which is not the best argument, but I think nonetheless deserves a mention. If we look back at human history, you always have to look at human history and civilizations, how we ate. When we were hunter-gatherers, there's no such thing like we were hunters first and all of a sudden we became gatherers. We were hunters and gatherers. So humans, we lived in caves, we ate whatever we shoot an animal, and then there's no animal around, or we are starving, go pick grains or whatever, wild fruits and grains. So back in history, there's enough evidence in archaeology that we were big time, Homo sapiens were big meat eaters. So you don't have to prove anything, but you do have to answer that philosophical question. That whatever nature does, nature seems to know what the hell it's doing, so to speak. So you have to respect nature. So maybe there is something else to it, although this is not any sort of evidence, because we used to be hunters and gatherers and we ate meat, and therefore we have to eat now. That's not a good argument either. But maybe it's a very complex subject. There were other variables, such as these hunters, they were always active. They were not like us. They were always out there. The only purpose was reproduction and food gathering and killing animals. That's their whole life was. So maybe they metabolized differently. Meat was not an issue. They could eat more meat. But then the grains that they eat, they were wild grains. They were not domesticated. And they were domesticated with that we put genes into there, and then we took the fiber out of them. We made it into fine flour, which is harmful for you. So we have messed with nature a lot. So maybe those wild grains were helping them. That's why we talk about whole wheat. So whenever you order a sandwich from a deli, ask for whole wheat. That's your best bet. So the thing is, there are, I think, more than one reasons to argue that meat or dairy may be not the best foods for you. At least a couple of them are purely philosophical. If any one of you have ever have you ever visited a meat factory? Well, if they know that you're watching how they do their job, they won't let you in. So you have to be insider to see. If you see what goes on there, the animal cruelty, you will never eat meat again if you have any conscience. I can tell you that. Even if you're a borderline criminal, you will say, maybe, this is not nice. And the way contamination, I wish there were some Jews in Tehachapi, I go get kosher food because they watch how they prepare. But 99% of the meat supply come from those meat factories. E. coli, risk to health. They got piss on it, and they're chopping that meat and pulverizing, and that's the packages that you receive at all these supermarkets. That's what we eat, believe it or not. So it's not only a philosophical question that we subject animals to so much cruelty. I think there is another, if you think a little bit deeper, thinking of ourselves as the sole creation or purpose of God, I think is a big mistake. Because if God did make this universe in his own image, he made the whole creation in his image, he did not make man in his own image. I think this is one of the biggest mistakes humanity has made. Sorry, I apologize from all the Christians and Jews and Muslims here and all the Hindus, which represent 3/4 of the world population. I think you talk about blasphemy. If there's anything blasphemous against God, is to keep saying that we're going to butcher and piss on everybody else because we humans, the entire purpose of creation was us. He made us in his own image. Therefore, we can go kill, butcher, and cut plants, destroy the environment, put forest on fire, piss on the entire planet. We can do that because without us, there will be no purpose. The very purpose of creation is us. So if you really want to insult God, keep on telling him that he made us in his own image. He made his entire wonderful biodiversity creation in his own image, if there is a God. That's what he did. He didn't make one species in his own image. That reflects our ignorance over thousands of years. The holy books that we worship. So that's one philosophical argument. The other one is we just talked about. There's so much contamination risk that it's not prepared properly. So if you must eat meat, maybe go to a local butcher or see how he cuts it, whatever. I mean, not asking you don't want to eat meat or you do want to eat meat. That's your decision. More and more evidence is coming out that proteins in the meat, more specifically they studied casein, can cause cancer. They also looked at all the countries in the world and studied breast cancer, colon cancer, heart disease, and they look at the animal fat consumption versus the incidence of breast cancer, colon cancer, other cancers, heart disease, and the graphs goes up like that. The more a nation consumes fat, animal fat, the more the risk of all these conditions. Research is pointing out in that direction. The more you consume animal fat and protein, the more the risk of these things. Like I said, we know pretty much sure about the animal fat is bad for you. It's been known for a while. That's where this idea of skimmed milk and 2% milk came from. They started to take the fat out because the industry was pushed into doing that. Otherwise, people won't buy it. It was the protein which is not yet quite conclusive. But the China study is among some others which is pointing the way. I think more research needs to be done. I think if some of you decide not to eat meat again, you can't go wrong. Whenever something is unknown, you have to play safe and protect yourself because you do not have the government or anybody who will protect you. The only person who will protect you is yourself. So we are going to, we have, how much time we have?
We have about 15 minutes.
Okay, we're going to continue and stop wherever it stops. I do want to discuss about 100 herb supplements I chose out of the 1,000 that were tested that show promise, and there's a reason to believe they may be useful. Again, they are subject to scrutiny and a question mark because the way the industry is and research sometimes get pushed by certain groups, and that is the big medical centers that do research is no exception. They push their agenda, believe it or not. So we have to be very careful about that. There is one more fact that they looked at the percentage. I think I already mentioned that if you eat about 5% of your diet is meat, you are still okay. More than that, you have the risk of developing certain cancers. On the other hand, fruits and vegetables that counteract all these diseases, and we know that for sure. I don't think anybody doubts that. It's just that if we started eating fruits and vegetables to counteract cancer and heart disease, how are these companies going to make millions of dollars or billions of dollars? They will not let you do that. How will they force you not to do that? Is because they will continue to barrage you with misinformation. And if you hear the same thing over, if you hear a lie over and over again on television, on radio, everywhere, you're humans, you eventually will believe that. Because nobody else is telling you otherwise. Nobody else is telling you, what else or what's underneath. Who is behind this? So I think we can get started with that list. And that's the third category. I remember I said I'll divide the discussion into 3 groups. So this is the third group where we're going to go over a list of things. And I will tell you what the research shows about herbs, supplements, foods, minerals, vitamins, etc., etc. And we will follow this alphabetical. In the course of this discussion, I will point out to you the things that I know for sure. Last time I had this guide, this is really research done by Mayo Clinic. They tested hundreds of herbs and supplements and did meta-analysis. Meta-analysis means you look at all the research papers that came out from different time to time and then analyze to see is it really true? You have to look at the whole research, not just one paper. So based on that, they have given opinion. Even they are vague because they are also politicians. You will see a lot of these findings. It appears that it may help. It looks like, it seems like. Preliminary studies show that it's beneficial. Initial studies show that beneficial. And the same people will tell you 2-3 years later, well, a large study is done that shows it's not beneficial for you. It can kill you. So this is the problem with it's not a problem, it's just unfortunate. We are dealing with a very complex biology, and biological sciences have not yet come of age. Maybe another 20-30 years down the line, we will be so smart in science that we can point out exactly what does what in your body. But today we are not there yet. We are still in primitive times. Therefore, because of the uncertainty in most of the research, with the exception of that which is already well established, because more than 50% of the things that the research is uncertain, people, crooks and criminals take advantage of the fact that there is a doubt left, that it's not a sure thing yet. Well, until it gets confirmed, I can still make another $1 billion until they really come out and everybody knows the truth. So this happens a lot, and there is really nothing you can do about it except use your own good judgment and do your own research, look at something and say, I don't really believe it. And as I go along, I will also tell you techniques how to see if someone making a claim or even a research paper, how to tell, is it genuine? Is it the only research? Who did it? Who is behind it? Who gave the money? Who is writing it? Has it been confirmed? Has other people tested it? So there is a way to kind of sort through the garbage and find that pearl that is in there somewhere, hidden, but it takes a lot of effort. First one, acai berry. Acai berry, it's a palm tree native to Central and South America, and it's been used as a weight loss product. I have a bad news for you. There is really no good evidence that it works for weight loss, and also the safety profile when tested is not very safe. So you don't want to take things that you don't know for sure they are safe for you. Andrographics. Andrographis is an Indian herb. It has bitter properties. The research, I think there's more than one research, and it's positive results that it works for common cold. Now, why do I mention that? Not only because there is strong evidence that it works, but also when it comes to common cold, you know how bad our cures are. You go to a doctor, you literally have to, you have to wait it out, have bed rest, and for a couple of weeks it will go away. Common cold, there is no really, you heard the expression, man has gone to the moon. No cure for common cold. There is really no cure for common cold. Therefore, if we know any things in the alternative medicine that seem to work, and we have positive results, and it's been tested 2 or 3 times, shows positive result, why not use it? Especially for, here's one of the big problems in conventional medicine, traditional medicine, in which I'm trained like every other physician, is that there is really no good cures or solutions for chronic diseases. Conventional medicine is good for acute problems. You break your leg, go to emergency, you have a stroke, if give you medication within 15-20 minutes, you will live, or otherwise you will die. But for chronic conditions, you have to really search and see where the answers are, because conventional medicine does not have very good answers. Later on in the year, we will be doing a seminar on functional medicine. I recommend you listen to that, how the whole system works, and what's good medicine, what's bad medicine. So Andrographis works for common cold, good evidence. Artichoke, when I talk about artichoke, which is the extract from a plant's large lobed leaves, it's a big lobed leaves. So it's not the heart of the artichoke, but the big lobed leaves, that's what they use. And it is used for dyspepsia, indigestion problems. Again, why do I bring this up? Because again, digestive problems, sometimes conventional medicines don't work too well. I can give you examples. I give you first, I say, okay, try Tums, didn't work. Mylanta, you try milk of magnesia, didn't work for heartburn. We tried Pepcid, didn't work. I put you on Prilosec or Nexium. There are some patients and nothing works for them. For most of them, these things work. But some patients, it's a big, huge problem. Therefore, if we know in the alternative medicine something that seems to work better than medications, why not use it? Of course, we have to look and make sure it's safe, safety profile is okay, and there's good evidence. Now, it's not written in stone that one day they won't find out that it does some kind of harm. I cannot guarantee you anything. But to this date, I can tell you that artichoke, the studies, are pretty good, show positive results. And especially because there's no good conventional treatments, it's good to use it for nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, heartburn. Anytime your stomach is upset, seem to work very well. And if you go to a health food store, okay, when you go to a health food store, you are going to look for it. It will say on it, it's for heartburn. It's made out of crushed leaves, big lobed leaves, not the delicious artichokes that we buy in vinegar and oil and taste so good. That's not what I'm talking about. Avocado, the only thing I can tell you about avocado is a lot of people use avocado or avocado oil, is that the safety profile is not very well known, but the reason I would recommend that to you, avocado is one of those fruits that, again, fairly good evidence that it brings down your bad cholesterol and increases your good cholesterol. And avocado oil, for the same reason, is monounsaturated, polyunsaturated. It's not like the animal fat, which is saturated. That's the word you're going to look for when you read labels. You don't want saturated fat in your diet, or at least minimize it. Black cohosh, when you think of black cohosh, you women all heard about it. It will work only for hot flushes. It won't work on all women. It will work on some. And sometimes younger girls use it for PMS or PMDD, and it seems to help, I would say, at least half the patients who will try that.
Yeah. Last night on the local news, it said that some study showed that women who have the most hot flashes have a 50% less chance of having breast cancer. In other words, it sounds like the more hot flashes you have, the better it is.
Okay, I can tell you that here is the problem with the news flash.
Oh yeah, I didn't say that. But I'm just throwing it out.
Okay, actually, if, yeah, that is, unless someone can do very large study and repeat it a few times, the medical community take interest in that, and it will be, you will hear it only once in your lifetime.
But
because
at least it took the bad rap from hot flashes.
Right.
That part of it, I like.
Sure, that's good to hear that. But is there a relationship with breast cancer? Probably not. But then again, any research, news flashes are very dangerous. Because patients ask me all the time, I heard this about this supplement, about calcium does this to you. And I said, make it easy for you. You go back. First, research the source that gave you that news. And then look up. I'll give you these techniques. You're going to look up where else is similar research. And then look for the qualification of the person. When was it done? Date is important. Is it a 20 years old research, or was it ever duplicated, or was it recent findings? What's the qualification of the person? Are there negative studies which was hidden under the rug? So unless you do all of that diligent work, you will never know. News flashes are, because media, even the news is for entertainment. You see how they are trying to act out, and even when they give you news, they have to do all these shenanigans in order to keep people watching the news. So the news has changed into entertainment. They have to constantly sensationalize from time to time, sensationalize everything so that you stay interested. It's all about ratings. So whenever you hear something and you want to check it out, it doesn't automatically mean that everything that comes on the news is wrong. No, I'm not stating that either. But I'm saying if you hear something, you really have to spend the time to research that. And I'll be giving you, we have to conclude, I'll be giving you tips next time when we do third or fourth seminar on nutrition. I will be giving you a list of 5-6 things. If something that you know, that you heard about, if it passed the test for those 5-6 things, you are in good shape. And in most cases, you will not even go beyond the first criteria. I'll give you 6. You will get stuck at the first because you can't find anything, because it's a bunch of, you know what. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Sorry we didn't finish.